Yesterday, my video, launched at 4 p.m., was almost immediately suppressed. I don't have a screenshot from that first hour, but you can see here on the screen, and for those that are listening, I'll describe it. We can see something strange in the analytics. The first blue bar on the left is the first hour of publication. It drops very quickly and then almost disappears entirely until at some point, for some reason, it pops back up. The reason it popped back up is that YouTube released the suppression. And the reason they did this was because I went into the video, I changed the title, the description, I changed the information, and I blurred several components of the video. Several hours later, YouTube removed that restriction, and as of this morning, this is what the analytics show. On the right, you can see this number is in the past 60 minutes. On the left, you can see the history of this video. This is extremely abnormal. It doesn't happen. It never happens on my second channel at all. Extremely rarely. I think it happens maybe like one time I saw a video take a hit. But I have seen videos outright deleted on my second channel, to which I've complained to a great deal. And it was deleted because I was commenting on a certain undercover reporter whose name I can't mention. And the reason I can't mention it is because I don't know why yesterday's video was suppressed. All I know is I had to go in and blur a ton of stuff and change everything around and hope that was enough. And what this says to me was, listen, my main channel is under intense scrutiny. Every single video I make is manually reviewed by YouTube staff, including this one, regardless of whether I ask them to or not. For most YouTube channels, you have to request a review if they demonetize. For me, they just review literally all of them. And there's some major benefits to this. One of the major benefits is that this has effectively removed demonetization from my channel, which is incredible. It used to be that every single video I would make would be demonetized, and I'd have no idea why, and couldn't do anything about it, and whatever. But now, as most of you know, Tim Pool being the milquetoast fence sitter who just comments on mainstream media, most of my videos are fine for monetization. I did discover something interesting. At one point, they were now deranking and censoring my videos because of the articles and sources I show might have a different story in the background, which creates some kind of offensive statement or is shocking or whatever that I don't even notice, right? So if I pull up, for instance, the New York Post, you may have noticed that in some of the past videos I've done, I have blurred almost the entire website of certain news sources. And it's because they cover certain topics I'm not allowed to talk about. And this brings me to the main point of this video. I was actually thinking about doing a video on this and talking about it a week or so ago. And I decided, no, I want to keep this video to very important, big breaking stories. The election is now. There are more important issues than this. But then yesterday happened. I talked about yesterday the Democratic debates, a particular instance that occurred with some Democrats and the things they've said that I cannot repeat because I don't know what got my video suppressed. I ended up blurring a bunch of things. The subject matter in the video had to do with the debates, and it had to do with why we're seeing the left go so far left. Paradoxically, YouTube then took action against me, suppressing the video, demonetizing, and deranking it so heavily you can actually see the results. And then I said to myself, you know what? This is enough, okay? While for the most part, my content gets by just fine, this is an example of them drawing that boundary and saying, hey, don't talk about this. You know what you're allowed to talk about. And that's a nightmarish future that we're walking towards. This directly, whether it's intentional or a byproduct of policies they don't quite understand, is the direct mass social engineering of our political world. We've already seen many people banned outright, falsely accused of things. Well, now YouTube has just told me yesterday, this video you made, although you talked about many mainstream things and cited mainstream news sources that anyone can talk about, that anyone can read, local affiliates and CNN, we're telling you this subject is out of bounds. No one will see it, and you will make no money. Now, the average person, the average grifter, might come out and say, oh, golly gee, I better not talk about this again. Well, I'm a bit of a milquetoast fence sitter. I'm a bit in the middle, and I'll tell you why. But I am going to do something important. First, for obvious reasons, before we move on, you got to go to timcast.com if you want to support my work. There's multiple ways you can do it. The other thing is, share this video because I'm going to explain how this system works and the nightmarish future we're walking towards. It's also how we overcome suppression like this. But the other thing I will say, The Tim Pool Daily Show includes all of my segments in an hour and a half on every podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you go. Check out my full podcast every day at 6:30 p.m. Do not rely on YouTube. It is unreliable. And there may be circumstances where I will talk about things on the podcast I cannot say on YouTube because YouTube will shut me down, and I know it. Now let's talk about bending the knee versus acting defiantly. I'm in the middle because I'm not a crazy person. I'm not here just to make a ton of money. So I'm not going to bend the knee and just never talk about these things again, but I will be very careful about how I broach these issues. And you've noticed that. It's not as simple as for me to say I'm either going to talk about it or not. It's a complicated problem. Here I realize something important. If I choose to just say, you know what, I'm going to go all out, upload the video a million times, just nonstop repeat uploading in different variations saying the same thing to prove how dare you censor me, well then I cease to exist. And then I'm never allowed to talk about important things. And I recognize this is a problem, and this is why I'm trying to be as transparent as possible about what you can expect going forward. The other issue is, so I can be totally defiant and watch everything burn down, or I can bend the knee and make all the money and get all the views and play the game exactly as they want. No, there will be a happy medium. I am going to talk about what I think is important. For the most part, it's usually within the boundaries that YouTube allows. I recognize it's a serious problem for free speech and other people, and so I will highlight that. And one of the main reasons that I don't want to just come out and say, you know what, screw you, and I'll burn it all down, the reason I don't want to do that is because I want to be able to highlight this, like videos like this. So you might not, I might not be able to say a certain word or talk about a certain group, but at least I will be able to tell you when it's being blocked and where you can go and find out more information. That is the most important thing to me. But in the end, I do feel like no matter what happens, there's nothing we can do to stop the nightmarish future heading our way. Let me show you some evidence and some more examples. Take a look at this graph. This is from a researcher named Mark Ledwich, who I've cited several times. Change in impressions after for April event. Something happened in April that changed the views of everybody. Upon the publication of this, I stopped saying in my promo in the beginning that YouTube was suppressing me or deranking me because it turns out the Tim Pool channel, as you can see, is actually moderately upranked, meaning my impressions have increased since the change in this, whatever happened. I'm above CNBC. In fact, the Young Turks took a big hit. All of this is still part of the problem. And as you can see from the image I showed you yesterday, those analytics, I am not immune to this. The reason why the Tim Pool channel is getting more impressions after this event is because my content is fairly milquetoast. I'm a fence sitter. I cite NBC in the New York Times. It is not particularly controversial, and that's why there's not very many hit pieces about me, though they do happen sometimes. The impressions have gone up because in whatever new system they've implemented, they have clearly defined what is acceptable and what isn't. Fox News, the reason they've taken the biggest impression bump is because most of the independent creators on YouTube are moderate to conservative, and because they've all been deranked, they have filled that gap with Fox News. They are telling you what is acceptable is corporate mainstream news, and you cannot speak out of line. The problem is, the suppression of my video yesterday was not out of line with any corporate mainstream news. I cited local outlets. I used them as sources, and they still suppressed my content. I don't know what the rules are. All I know is they expect me to come out next and say, I'm sorry, oh great master, I'll never harm you again, No, I'm going to make a video about it. I'm going to tell you what's happening. This is very important. I've showed this before, but I want to make sure I go through this, and I want to show you there's more evidence. Check it out. Timcast, my second channel, has been deranked. The reason for this is because on my second channel, I care a lot less. It's a second channel meant to talk about cultural issues, things like movies and video games. I've done several videos about Joker and things like that. And sometimes I talk about very serious issues that I know I can't talk about on this channel. This is why I want to make sure you realize what's happening. There are multiple platforms my content exists on. I use Twitter, I use Facebook, I use Minds.com, and I have the podcast. So I'll stress it again. Subscribe to my podcast. It's the Tim Pool Daily Show. It's on Apple. It's actually decently ranked. I'm really impressed and grateful because the podcast is doing well. But it is an hour and a half of all of my content from the day. It's six segments. We can see here that by purposefully making sure my main channel content, this channel, falls in line with big stories, and it's the most important thing, to be honest. I didn't intentionally start ignoring certain cultural issues. It was kind of like, I want to talk about what is Elizabeth Warren saying, what's going on with impeachment. YouTube says all of that talk is okay. But when I talk about, what I talked about yesterday was not out of line. I was talking about activists and the Democrats and why I think we see, cancel culture and this stuff. And I don't even know if there's something I'm saying here that may result in me getting this video suppressed. All I know is I went in and I blurred a bunch of stuff and changed the title and the thumbnails, and then they finally agreed to release it. What I'm telling you now is, if you want the full important news picture, it's going to be the podcast. It really, really is. So here's the thing. CNN can talk about it. YouTube says fine. I can't talk about it. Fox News, the #1 biggest upranked channel since these changes, can talk about whatever they want. It's Fox News. They're called fake news conspiracy by CNN, but YouTube says it doesn't matter. Fox News is socially acceptable no matter what they say. However, when I talk about the same things, my video gets suppressed. Now, I want to make sure you realize how dangerous this is. David Pakman is on the D-rank list. The Rubin Report, The Guardian, BBC News, Steven Crowder, Joe Rogan Clips, and ABC News, the biggest loser of all. What we're seeing here is that while certain corporate channels like Fox News and MSNBC are getting a very, very big, uptick, it's because they are falling in line with what YouTube is saying is acceptable and what isn't. And we can see YouTube doesn't care who you are, Fox News Insider, Bloomberg, The Thinkery, or the New York Times even. They don't want what you've got. Now, here's what I think. I don't think that this is somebody who has an evil master plan at YouTube. What I think is happening is that YouTube has determined certain things are taboo and controversial, and they won't allow it. Fox News, for whatever reason, is substantially less taboo, so they get up-ranked heavily. So Fox News may talk about things that are bad, but it's better than the rest. This also means that ABC News can put out a story, whether it's real or not. We saw that whole fiasco with the fake news, with the fake video. And YouTube might tell ABC, too bad. We're going to de-rank that so no one can see it. YouTube is even having an impact on mainstream journalism. YouTube is telling me when they demonetize a video and de-rank it, that was out of bounds. And the average person, or I should say at scale, think about it this way. The reason casinos always win is because of the gambling margin. If, on average, every game gives the casino a 50.1% chance of winning over a long enough period of time, the house always wins. If YouTube institutes rules that force everyone to make a certain style of content or not talk about certain things, over time you will stop seeing those things. And we know what this list includes, and I can't name them. They're in the rules of YouTube, and if I name them, I will likely get this video suppressed as well. YouTube says you can't talk in certain ways about certain things, and that includes ABC News. YouTube is dictating journalism outside of independent creators. They want me and everyone else to follow the path of least resistance towards a profit motive, to say, this content makes money, therefore I will talk about it and not talk about this. I'll tell you what, on this channel, I actually do tend to do that. If it's a mainstream news story that ignores particular issues, I will do it on this channel on purpose. But I have a second channel, specifically for content that is more cultural, and I am less concerned about getting demonetized. I will fully admit, my second channel is almost entirely demonetized every single video. If there is a news story that is going to be very serious and controversial, I will absolutely talk about it. And it'll be on that channel. This channel is going to be reserved for larger mainstream political news stories. And you know what? I have a choice to make. I can say, I'll just quit YouTube outright. I just don't want to play that game, right? Or I can say, I will have the podcast. I can promote the podcast. The podcast may have different content on it. And I will be doing content on other platforms. And YouTube will give you this specific bit of content. I think that is the most reasonable approach. And I think it affords me the opportunity to tell you what YouTube is doing. First of all, we've seen this, okay? Reducing borderline content and raising up authoritative voices. As we've seen from the data I've just shown you, that includes mainstream media. If they talk about things that YouTube finds to be borderline because the news covers sensitive issues, then, well, there you go. They're going to get deranked. But let me tell you now what this results in. It results in the news cycle we see today. Take a look at CNN. and some of the information that was released over the past few days I can't reference because we have seen what happens when I talk about it. This information release shows that CNN is driven by a profit motive. Of course they are. They're a business. Now think about what happens. CNN could talk about conflict and crisis. Well, that's going to get deranked. YouTube says, no, you can't talk about that. So CNN then chooses, well, what's going to make us the most money? The Orange Man. And that's why they only talk about Trump. Admittedly, this channel you're watching now primarily does talk about mainstream top-level politics, like Ocasio-Cortez, Pelosi, and Donald Trump, because it is safe. Because it is safe and YouTube won't delete my channel. They won't suppress my content or take away monetization when I do it. Again, my alternative is to make sure you go to the podcast, and I have a second channel for issues that I don't care if they're deranked or demonetized. I just talk about what I feel like talking about. I will stress, again, 99% of the content I make doesn't fall out of bounds. But when it does, rest assured, I will tell you, and that's why I'm doing this video. Let's talk about the nightmarish future we're heading towards. YouTube CEO, politicians can break our content rules. Twitter explains when it will remove abusive tweets by world leaders. Take a look at these two stories. What they're telling you is that politicians can break the rules. Now, many people will say, that's not fair. Why are they allowed to break the rules? No, I'll tell you what it really means. It means that the language used by those politicians today will not be removed, but it means anybody, one of their supporters, will not be able to repeat it, will not be able to share it or comment on it. Any one of their supporters will not be allowed to gain any prominence off of the ideas of certain political leaders. Think about what that means. YouTube has determined rules. The House always wins. If YouTube says you can't say X, they want to avoid the controversy by allowing the politicians to say it, fine. But that means going forward from this point on, they have drawn a line in the sand and they are saying no one will ever gain prominence again off of these ideas. We have deemed it so. I refuse to live in that world. And you know what? I'm going to have to say it. I think we're heading there no matter what anyone does. I don't think I can stop it. I don't think anyone can. My choices right now are to defy and say, no, I will not back down, and then I just won't be on YouTube at all. And then, admittedly, that does sound pretty nice. I got to admit, I've talked about it over and over again. I would love to take my van. It's got a bed. It's got all this, equipment in it, and just go skate and just make vlogs and not care about politics of the world. But I have to admit, I'm a fighter, and I'm passionate about political issues, and I won't back down. This is the best I can do. Do I go up against Google, who I know can just suppress my content and shut me down? Or do I do my best to warn you about what's coming and show you the proof? It's the best I can do. It's what I have to accept. Again, I will stress, most of my content I don't have to worry about. But when it happens, I see it. I feel like I'm on a racetrack, and my race car grazes the edge and sparks go flying, and I can see them wagging the finger at me saying, don't you do that again. And so I want to make sure you know what's happening. If Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are saying right now, fine, we're going to allow Trump to tweet, but anybody who sounds like them, as of today, will not be allowed. There's a YouTuber named Carl Benjamin you might know. He ran for political office, and Twitter suspended his campaign account. They are telling you they have a monopoly in this sector, okay? Now, not all people on these platforms, but they're slowly gaining more and more of this space. Soon, they will control all of it. So long as most journalists use Twitter, we are going to be beholden to what Twitter allows. And that means if you're running for office and Twitter doesn't legitimize you, you will not win. Don't take my word for it. Here's a story from The Intercept from just a few days ago. Twitter tips the scale toward incumbents by refusing to verify primary challengers. Let me just stress, if you have a congressman who says offensive and wild things that is supported by his constituents, he will keep winning because Twitter and YouTube and Facebook will not suspend him when he says this. But when his challenger steps up, YouTube will suspend them. Facebook and Twitter will suspend them. And they won't verify the primary challengers. What this means: the system is protecting the establishment and the status quo and is trying to resist at all costs another Trump. I'm not saying it's on purpose. It just seems like what the result is going to be. Or I'll put it this way. A lot of people are going to say it's on purpose. I don't think that's the case. I think this is that YouTube recoiling and saying, we don't care what you're talking about. It must be safe. It must be safe. The reason they're allowing politicians to break the rules is because they garner controversy when they ban a politician. They're trying to avoid controversy. That means no one can talk like this except you're a politician. Seemingly contradictory. It should be one or the other, right? Well, we're going to end up in a world where Trump can tweet all day and night these important things, and people are going to keep supporting him and voting for him because no incumbent will be able to challenge him if their speech breaks the rules. The incumbents are allowed to break the rules, and the new up-and-comers are not. Do you understand what world we are going to live in? If the left doesn't get behind solving this problem, we are in serious trouble. Elizabeth Warren has called out and said they should break up the big tech companies. Maybe that's the answer, I don't know, but at least she's talking about it much respect. Ocasio-Cortez has talked about the surveillance machine, also a serious problem. Andrew Yang said, 21st century problems need 21st century solutions. Agree? Awesome. Let's talk about this. I do not want to live in this world. Look, if you want to know what my video was about yesterday, go to my video and check it out. It's on this channel. It's in the video section. They have removed the suppression from it because I went in and blurred some stuff. And at least then the ideas can persist. But I don't know. It's not the first time they've done this. When I launched my Timcast IRL channel, I launched it specifically in a sort of, I don't want to say panic, but I was alert. I was like, there it is. I better go out and make sure I have this new channel. In that channel, I said we're going to do, vans and trips and travel. And admittedly, I am tied up with business stuff. We got a lot happening. It's going to be epic. Just wait and see. Expanding. But in that video, I talked about how I did a story talking about the New York Times and some things they've said that I can't tell you. And they suppressed the video outright. And I had to go in and blur the proof, the source of the information, because YouTube wouldn't allow it. And that means when the New York Times says something that's out of bounds, and I want to make sure you know about it, YouTube told me, don't you dare. Don't you dare. And so I made a new channel, and I said, it's the best I can do. It's the best I can do. Because admittedly, YouTube owns this space. They own video, and there's nothing I can do about it. In the end, the future we're going to have is going to be establishment politicians controlling the narrative because the platforms will protect them and reject anyone else who's rising up. That's the world being created. They're going to censor the anti-war types. They're going to censor, conservative types. And they're only going to allow crony establishment pro-big business. Congratulations. Social media dominates, is slowly taking over the economy. They're controlling more and more of the space, and something needs to be done about it. Hopefully, this video will provide some circumstantial evidence to show you it happens, to explain why the content goes in a direction it does. But let me just remind you, going forward on this channel, you're going to see more of what I've been doing. Look, all of the videos I've done over the past several months, there's been no problems because I'm talking about Trump and the inquiry and the investigations. Very, very tepid, mainstream milquetoast stuff. But don't be surprised if I can't talk about certain things like I did yesterday. They didn't want to allow it. Don't be surprised when you see news articles are heavily blurred and I only show you the direct sources because they won't allow it. And I will stress then, you need to go to any podcast platform, Tim Pool Daily Show. It's the safest way to get all of my content unfiltered because I'll say this too, admittedly, even Apple and Google and those other platforms have the same rules on those platforms too. The thing is, you know what? There's no winning. There really isn't. I hate to be a pessimist, but I'm telling you now, we are here in the dystopia. I can choose to have my channels deleted, or I can choose to make videos like this and stay within those boundaries. Because I'm 99% of the time within those boundaries, I'm not concerned, and don't expect me to change my opinions because I'm worried about money. That's not the case. I will absolutely come out and tell you when something like this happens. And you can go to my second channel, which is youtube.com/TimCastNews, and subscribe for many stories, because I do 5 segments on that channel as well. I guess that's it, man. I think I showed you what I could show you. They're going to suppress even mainstream news, right? Because they're drawing the lines. And ABC fell out of bounds. Sorry, you talk about things that are taboo, ABC, and so is the New York Times. And it just means that people are going to see these trends. They're going to figure out what YouTube wants them to do, and they're going to do it. And this is exactly the problem that YouTube is supposed to be solving. Instead, they are drawing lines and forcing everyone into neat little boxes. Our future is going to be a terrifying dystopia where we're all going to be NPC-type creatures walking around believing what our Google overlords tell us to believe. I'm sorry, I don't know what else I can do about it. But I'll do my best. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. And I will see you all there.